Some people choose to stay home even when there are chances to socialize. You might be one of them. Society misreads this as shyness, laziness, or isolation. But Jung suggests something different. Loneliness can be a call to an inner journey, not a rejection of the world. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. Comment 1 if you've ever skipped a social plan because something in you felt called inward instead. Comment 2 if you usually push past that feeling to go out anyway. What pulls you? When you stay home, you're not choosing four walls. You're answering an inner voice that asks for depth rather than distraction. The city hum, small talk, and constant performance can feel draining. The quiet of your room steadies you. That relief is a signal from the psyche. You need silence to hear yourself. Home becomes a place for honest confrontation. Without an audience, you meet the self behind the roles. This isn't withdrawal. It's a return to essence. Choosing silence is like opening an invisible door. It takes courage to walk that inward path. Yet Jung reminds us, each person holds a vast inner universe, and solitude lets you enter it. In that space, real questions arise. Who am I? What am I seeking? What gives my life meaning? At first, the journey is uncomfortable. Silence brings up repressed thoughts, hidden fears, unexpressed feelings. That's the beginning of awakening. Many avoid it by filling the day with noise that leaves the soul empty. True self-knowledge requires passing through this inner night. Think of a house with locked rooms. Solitude places the keys in your hand. Behind each door are forgotten memories, intense feelings, abandoned dreams. You're not escaping life. You're approaching it from the inside out. The choice to stay home can be the first step of individuation. The honest work of becoming who you are, without the mask, without the crowd, and finally, without the static that drowns out your own voice. Ever notice how the bustle outside leaves you uneasy while your room feels like oxygen? That calm isn't proof you're antisocial. It's your psyche flagging a need. Turn the volume down so I can speak. Jung would call this an invitation to the inner journey, not a rejection of the world. The relief you feel in quiet is diagnostic. It tells you where psychic energy actually replenishes. Two key ideas clarify this signal. First, the persona, the social mask, costs energy to maintain. Small talk, constant performance, and subtle self-editing drain libido, psychic energy. Second, the self, the organizing center of the whole psyche, seeks balance. When outer life becomes overloud, the self compensates by pulling you toward silence. What you read as, "I just want to be home," is often the self-restoring equilibrium. A day of back-to-back engagements leaves you irritable, foggy, disconnected. An hour alone settles your nervous system and clarifies your thoughts. That's not moodiness. It's a measurable gradient of meaning. The place where your mind clears is where your psyche wants to work. Think of the quiet as a workshop where deeper questions can finally spread out on the table. What am I doing out of habit? What actually matters? Which voice is mine? People often pathologize this preference. If crowds drain me, something's wrong. But Jung reminds us that loneliness can be a call, the psyche's way of redirecting attention from outer spectacle to inner substance. When the body sighs with relief at home, it's reporting on fit, the fit between your current life and your deeper orientation. Treat the felt peace as information. Create a small ritual that opens that invisible door. 5 minutes of breath, a notebook, a lamp in a quiet corner. Ask one honest question and wait. Don't rush to fill the space with screens. Boredom may be the doorway to a first real conversation with yourself. Silence is where the real confrontation happens. Without an audience, there is no costume to wear, no role to perform. Jung would call this the moment when the persona loosens and the shadow steps into view. The parts you deny, envy you refused to name, grief you postponed, anger you polished into politeness, begin to tap your shoulder. It's tempting to reopen the browser, Turn on a podcast, text someone, anything to keep the inner room noisy. But if you hold still for a few breaths, you notice something startling. The very feelings you feared are not trying to ruin you. They're trying to tell you the truth. Solitude becomes a mirror that does not flatter or condemn. It simply shows. In that honest reflection, you see not a problem to fix, but a person to meet. Think of your inner world as a house with locked rooms. Daily life keeps you in the brightly lit hallway. Efficient, social, quick to move along. In solitude, you're handed a ring of keys. One door opens to an old memory you've explained away for years. Another unlocks a forgotten delight that still makes your chest warm. A third reveals a dream you abandoned because it didn't fit the script. Each room smells different. Each carries a mood and a message. This is why the quiet can feel uncomfortable at first. You are reacquainting yourself with a home you left in a hurry. And yet, once you've stood inside a room long enough, you notice a second truth. The fear fades, and a clean air moves in. Self-knowledge is not a hallway sprint. It's room by room. You're not withdrawing from life. You're returning to your essence. The world often rewards the mask. Competence, charm, readiness. But the psyche insists on congruence. When you choose silence, you're not running from people. You're running toward what is unperformable in you. That's why the calm at home can feel like a door that opens inward. Jung's individuation is this movement from borrowed roles toward a center that is privately known and publicly steady. The work is ordinary and radical at once. Sit, breathe, notice, name. Each act of honest noticing is a vote for reality over performance. From the outside, this looks like doing nothing. From the inside, it is precise work. The unconscious does not speak in paragraphs. It speaks in symbols, images, body temperatures, tiny shifts in mood. Outer silence lets you hear this language. Boredom may be the mind knocking. Stop filling me. Start listening. A blank page, a slow walk, a quiet cup of tea. These are not avoidance routines. They are instruments. What seems passive is active. You are letting the lake settle so the depths become readable. The question isn't, how do I get rid of this restlessness? But, what is it pointing toward? Again and again, the answer sounds like alignment. Fewer veneers, more essence. Notice the energetic contrast that follows. After a long social day, you feel thinned out, jangly at the edges, as if your attention has been sanded down. In solitude, your inner voltage returns. Thoughts line up. Breath lengthens. This is not a quirk, it's regulation. Jung would say the psyche self-corrects to restore balance when one pole, outer engagement, dominates too long. The self seeks wholeness. When you give it quiet, it gives you back coherence. You stop defending and start digesting. The day's fragments find their places. There is also a simple freedom. At home, you are no longer performing. Society demands a choreography, proof of usefulness, good humor, quick takes. Solitude is the unmasking. Your face unclenches. Your tone flattens into truth. Your posture returns to an unguarded shape that children naturally keep. In that relief, a subtle joy appears. You like your own company. When you like your own company, you no longer need constant external stimulation to feel alive. You become less purchasable by noise. This is not a romanticization of loneliness. It's a reframing of its value. Jung warned that many people fill their lives with distractions, not because they are full of life, but because they are afraid of meeting the life within. The first minutes of quiet can feel like darkness. Stay a little longer, and the eye adapts. You begin to make out forms. A grief that wants witnessing. A longing that wants language. A desire that wants a vow. Who looks inside, awakens, isn't a poster. It's a physiological sequence. Attention gathers, defenses soften, meaning coagulates. Do you notice your body settle and your mind clarify when you finally get quiet? Comment 1. If silence reliably restores you. Comment 2 if it mostly makes you restless. Modern science, interestingly, doesn't disagree. When you turn attention inward, networks involved in self-referential processing and perspective-taking light up. The same circuitry you use to understand yourself is recruited to understand others. Solitude, then, isn't selfish retreat. It's training. By listening to your own interior, you become more literate in the interior of those you love. Empathy deepens because you have practiced with the most complex person you'll ever meet. You. The payoff isn't only insight, but resilience. Quiet time strengthens the mental muscles that metabolize stress and recognize patterns. You start catching the early tremors, a thought loop forming, an old trigger warming up, and you have options before the quake. You find words faster. You say no smaller and sooner, so you don't have to scream no later. You put your attention where it matters, and your nervous system thanks you with steadiness instead of spikes. All of this is why the peace you feel alone is not empty. It's full. Quiet fullness sounds like a paradox until you've felt it. The way a room can hum when it's finally cleared. The way a page can vibrate before any ink touches it. The psyche's message is consistent. Pause, listen, come closer. The next question is whether you will treat that message as a flaw to be fixed, or a compass to be followed. There is an old image for what you're doing when you choose solitude. The hermit. Not the bitter recluse, but the wanderer with a lamp. In Jungian terms, this is an archetype, an inner pattern that appears across cultures whenever a person withdraws temporarily to see more clearly. On the tarot card, the hermit's lamp shines only a few steps ahead. That is enough. You don't need the whole map. You need the next true step. Moses in the desert, the Buddha beneath the tree, Christ in the wilderness. Each undergoes a solitary interval before turning outward with clarity. The pattern isn't escape, it's preparation. Modern life mistrusts this rhythm. We suspect anyone who steps off the carousel. But Jung reminds us that the lamp's light is won by entering one's own darkness. The clarity you bring back to others is proportional to the honesty you maintain in solitude. This archetype lives in everyone. It activates when you silence the crowd inside your head long enough to hear a voice that is not scripted by fashion, fear, or applause. Not all solitude is the same. There is fear-based withdrawal and awareness-based retreat. One shrinks your world, the other enlarges it. In fear-based solitude, you lock yourself in a mental cell to avoid the unpredictability of life. The air grows stale. Your world, smaller. In conscious solitude, you step into a bright, open room you chose. The windows are wide, the air moving. You are not avoiding the world, but gaining the perspective to meet it without losing yourself. Think of closing your eyes not to deny sight, but to see more precisely. Think of silence not as the absence of music, but as the tuning of the instrument. This difference often goes unseen from the outside. Two people stay home. One is hiding, the other is listening. The same outward act can signal weakness or strength, depending on the motive. Jung's decisive question cuts through. Are you fleeing because you cannot bear the world? Or are you entering solitude to find the self with which you can bear it? Your answer alters the entire trajectory of your life. One path hardens into avoidance. The other ripens into presence. When solitude is chosen consciously, it becomes a bridge, not a wall. You begin to feel how outer life, expectations, demands, relationships, rests on an inner bank of dreams, fears, memories, and essence. Picture a suspension bridge. One bank is the social world, the other is the interior world. Solitude is the span that allows you to cross without dropping into the river of confusion. Without the bridge, you cling to one shore and call it reality. With the bridge, you move back and forth in rhythm, carrying lessons in both directions. This is individuation in motion, the slow braid of inside and outside into a coherent life. Enjoying your own company lowers the need for incessant stimulation. You stop chasing proof that you exist. In the quiet, the inner voice awakens not to scold, but to guide. It asks you to observe, accept, and reconcile the parts you've exiled, your shadow, and, in doing so, enlarges your capacity for genuine connection. Paradoxically, time alone makes you more available to others, not less. You can enter conversation without the invisible hunger that begs to be filled by their approval. The practical signs are simple. After a day of noise, you notice how drained you feel. After an hour of silence, your energy coheres. The psyche is seeking balance. Away from the chorus of other people's needs and opinions, you hear your own tone clearly. The relief you feel is liberation from performance. You do not have to be interesting. You only have to be real. There is a biological rhyme to this psychological song. When you turn inward, journaling, meditating, staring out the window with attention, your brain recruits networks used for self-referential thinking and for understanding others. The overlap is telling. Self-knowledge and empathy are neighbors. Solitude trains the muscles that let you step into another's inner world without losing your footing. In this way, the hermit's lamp is not just for you. It lights the path of anyone who walks beside you later. Reflective solitude also builds resilience. Quiet teaches you to name patterns earlier, to metabolize stress rather than merely endure it. You recognize the difference between a feeling and a fate. The more you practice, the more quickly you find the thread of meaning in a tangle of events. What looks like stillness from the street is actually inner construction, beam by beam, room by room. Staying home, then, is not the end of engagement, but the strengthening of it. You go inward to return outward with a steadier hand. Peace within yourself becomes the precondition for offering peace in your relationships. Without inner listening, you can't truly listen to anyone else. Conscious solitude trains love to be less needy and more generous, less performative and more precise. So treat home, silence, and solitude as temples, ordinary, domestic, sacred. A chair by the window, a notebook, the decision to breathe before you scroll. These are thresholds where the psyche expands, and truth gathers itself enough to speak. If you honor them, you begin to notice a quiet law at work. In silence, what is false thins out. What is true takes on weight. And then the choice that once looked like antisociality reveals itself for what it is, a fidelity to the soul's deeper call. You are not leaving life. You are entering it from the only doorway that has ever held, your own presence. Post-social exhaustion is a simple, reliable teacher. After a day of conversations, commutes, and constant micro-adjustments to other people's moods, you feel thinned out. Not broken, just dispersed. In solitude, the opposite happens. Your awareness gathers itself. Your breathing deepens. Your thoughts line up. Your attention stops scattering like light on water and starts focusing like a beam. Jung would say the psyche is compensating, restoring the polarity that outer life overextends. This isn't a personality flaw. It's homeostasis. When you honor the rhythm, outward, then inward, you stop fighting yourself and start cooperating with the design. Away from everyone's voices, you meet your own without distortion. Roles loosen. The performer sits down. The witness stands up. Here, the value of solitude becomes stark. Society asks for performance, but your essence asks for presence. Performance burns fuel quickly. Presence generates its own. The relief you feel at home is liberation from proving, polishing, and positioning. You don't have to be on. You get to be precise. Precision is a kind of mercy, with yourself, then with others. The unconscious, meanwhile, speaks a language that only quiet can decode. Images, symbols, bodily sensations, textures of mood. What looks like boredom is often the first minutes of a conversation in that language. Stay. The lake clears. A fragment surfaces. A childhood scene. A recurring dream image. A wordless ache. Don't interrogate it. Include it. Inclusion is how shadow material starts to integrate. You're not trying to fix yourself. You're letting the exiled parts of you sit at the table. Integration is less like surgery and more like hospitality. Have you ever stayed with an uncomfortable feeling long enough to hear what it was asking for? Comment 1 if you've tried hosting your emotions. Comment 2 if you tend to distract yourself instead. Biology quietly affirms this. During inward focus, journaling, mindful breathing, simple reflection, brain regions involved in self-referencing and perspective-taking activate, especially along medial prefrontal networks. The same circuitry helps you model other people's inner worlds. In other words, self-understanding and empathy share a backbone. This is why solitude can make you easier to be with. You've practiced navigating a complex interior, your own, so you don't panic when someone else's complexity appears. Jung intuited this long before scanners drew it in color. By looking within, you cultivate the very capacities that connect you without. This training grounds resilience. Alone, you start to recognize your personal weather patterns. The way stress first tingles in your jaw, the thought loop that signals a coming spiral, the story you tell when afraid. Early recognition widens your options. You breathe instead of bite. You take a walk instead of a fight. You write 3 honest lines instead of launching a performance. Over time, these small pivots accumulate into sturdiness, the kind that doesn't announce itself, but is obvious in a crisis. Loneliness, then, can be a tool rather than a verdict. If you treat it as information, it guides you to the rooms that need light. Behind one door, an abandoned project whose neglect keeps leaking sadness into your days. Behind another, a grief that needs witness, not solution. Behind a third, a value you mouth in public but betray in private. Solitude hands you the keys. You do not break the doors down. You open them with care. Jung's language of wholeness is exact here. The goal is not to become pure light, but to become a person who knows where the light and dark live, and who can hold both without splitting. This is why choosing silence is not self-rejection, but self-affirmation. You don't withdraw to disappear. You withdraw to appear, to yourself first. That appearance gives you a different quality when you re-enter the world. Less hungry, more available. Less defensive, more discerning. You can be with others without making them a mirror you must constantly polish. You can love without the bargain of complete me, because solitude has shown you the places that needed your own company most. And notice the humility that grows here. The longer you practice conscious solitude, the less you need to advertise your insights. You become suspicious of spiritual theatrics because you know how quiet the real work feels. It's the difference between a locked cell and a chosen, sunlit room. One is fear's architecture. The other is freedom's. From the street, both look like staying home. Inside, the atmospheres could not be more different. So, ask Jung's decisive question plainly. Am I fleeing because I cannot endure the world? Or am I entering solitude to find the self with which I can endure it? Answering honestly changes the texture of your days. It also changes the meaning of your return. When solitude serves individuation, your movement toward the center, you don't come back with superiority. You come back with a lamp. The light is modest. It reaches only a few steps ahead. But it's enough for the next faithful step, and the next, and the next. Conscious solitude prepares you for relationship instead of pulling you away from it. Without inner listening, you can't really listen to anyone else. You only confirm your projections. Time alone punctures projection. You begin to notice where you mistake another's face for a mirror of your unmet needs. Jung's language helps. What you cannot accept in yourself, you tend to locate in others. What you over-idealize outside often points to an undeveloped function within. In quiet, you practice holding your own feelings without exporting them. Then, with people, you can offer attention that isn't covertly bargaining for rescue. Love becomes less about fusion and more about clear meeting. Two centers present, neither devouring the other. Treat solitude as a bridge that you cross daily, not a hideout you vanish into. On one bank, outer expectations, roles, schedules. On the other, inner dreams, fears, memories, essence. If you live only on the outer bank, you become efficient and empty. Only on the inner bank, you become insightful and inert. The rhythm is the life. Cross, gather, return. The image of a suspension bridge clarifies the practice. The cables are your rituals: breath, pen, prayer, a walk without your phone. The deck is your attention, firm enough to carry bits of truth from inside to outside and back again. Cross often and lightly. Don't camp mid-span. Don't burn either shore. You'll start to recognize a reliable arc. First, silence feels like deprivation. Then, it becomes neutral. Then, it reveals texture, the subtle music beneath the noise. That music carries information about the work that matters, the relationships that nourish, the patterns that wound, the limits that protect. Over weeks, you notice behavior shift. You agree less automatically. You apologize more precisely. You say yes slower and no sooner. You measure your day not by how much you performed, but by how honestly you participated. When setbacks happen, and they will, remember the psyche's cyclical nature. There will be weeks when the outer world demands more, and you feel the inner room gather dust. Don't dramatize it. Return as one returns to a practice or a friend. The hermit's lamp doesn't shame, it beckons. Even 5 quiet minutes can be enough to re-thread attention and clear the day's static. The goal isn't purity, it's continuity. Many small returns that keep you within earshot of yourself. There's a civic implication too. People who can be alone without disintegrating are less likely to be captured by mass moods, less likely to demand from politics or partners what can only be found by turning inward. Individuation produces citizens who can disagree without dehumanizing, because they've practiced holding internal opposites. Jung called this holding of tension a crucible. By not rushing to premature solutions, something genuinely new can form. In your life, that new might be a boundary, a vocation, a different way of loving. In society, it might be a cooler discourse, a refusal of frenzy. If you want a minimal template for conscious solitude, try this. Sit. 3 slow exhales to signal entry. Name 3 sensations. Name 1 emotion. Ask 1 question you don't know the answer to. Wait with it for 2 minutes without fixing. Write 3 unedited lines. Close with 1 small, concrete action that honors what you heard. That's the whole bridge in 10 minutes. Do it most days, and watch how your tone with yourself and others changes. You will sound less like a judge and more like a steward. Stewardship is the spirit of individuation, caring for the whole of you, not just the presentable parts, so you can contribute something whole to the world. Here is the heart of it, drawn tight and clear. Choosing to stay home is not laziness. It is often the psyche's way of reclaiming energy misallocated to performance. The calm you feel there is diagnostic, not defective, a sign that the self is recentering the system. Solitude, consciously chosen, is not escape but encounter, with shadow, with memory, with values that outlast fashion. The hermit archetype isn't a sentence to isolation. It's a stage of ripening that readies you for clearer giving. Neuroscience's maps echo Jung's intuition. Inward attention trains the same networks needed for empathy. The more fluently you hear yourself, the more gently and accurately you can hear others. Integration, not perfection, is the aim. Wholeness, not whiteness of spirit, is the light. And the bridge image endures because it is true. You cross and cross again. And each crossing makes the shores feel less like enemies and more like halves of one landscape. So let the mislabels fall away. You're not hiding. You're tuning. You're not rejecting the world. You're refining your way of being in it. The quiet you seek is not a vacuum. It's pressure at the right density for meaning to form. And meaning is lighter than anxiety, but heavier than entertainment. Exactly the weight a life can carry without cracking. Jung wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." You have already known this on the nights when the party felt like sand, and the chair by the window felt like water. What remains is not more theory, but more fidelity. Keep the lamp. Keep the bridge. Keep the room by the window. The world you re-enter from there will be the same, yet not the same, because you will be carrying your own presence, and that changes the way everything else appears. Will you create a small ritual, a lamp, a chair, a few breaths, to keep that inner presence lit? Comment 1 if you're committing to a daily practice. Comment 2 if you're curious, but not sure where to start.